Hello everyone, and welcome to the Update Statement lecture. So in this lecture, we're going to learn how to use the update statement to update existing data in a table. So we just learned how to use insert into clause in order to insert data into a table, but now if we want to update it or use a condition to update the data in the table, we can use the update statement along with a set statement in order to do that. And then we'll see some examples in pgadmin of how to actually go about doing it. But first, let's go ahead and walk through the syntax. So to change the values of the columns in a table, you use the update statement. And what I mean by change the values of the columns, I'm talking about the actual rows. So the rows are the values of particular columns. So in order to do this, you can say update the table name, and then you use the set column equal to some value. So for example, if you have update, let's go back to the link table that we were working with throughout this section. You can say update link set, and for instance, we have the name column. So I can say update link set name equal to, and then I can put in a string there for some generic name, such as my name or my underscore name as a string. And that would update all the rows or all the values of that name column to be equal to that string, that my name string. Or you can also add a where condition to that in order to only update certain rows. So let's go ahead and walk through the steps one more time. First, you specify the table name where you want to update the data after the update clause. So you have update and then you specify the table name. Second, you list the columns whose values you want to change in the set clause. So you say update table, set, and then the columns who you actually want to change the row values of. And then third, if you want, you can determine which rows you want to update in the condition of the where clause. So you can set some sort of where condition in order to only update certain rows of that table or that column. So let's go ahead and see some examples with the link table from the previous lecture. If you don't have the link table, go ahead and go back and quickly create the link table using the SQL syntax from the previous lectures in this section. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and hop to pgadmin and check out the link table that we made earlier. Alright, so here I am at pgadmin. I opened up a SQL editor and I ran select asterisk from link in order to select everything from link. And you see here we have the URLs, the names, and we had that serial ID integer. So let's go ahead and walk through a couple of examples of how to use the update clause in order to update data in this table. So let's go ahead and explore something like this. First thing we're going to say is update. Then you have the table name, so I'm going to update the link table. And then you say set, and then you're going to have a column name. So for instance, we have the description column, which is actually full of just nulls right now. It's empty. So I'm going to say set description equal to, and now let's just input a string here. So we'll say let's go ahead and say empty description. And then a semicolon. So what this should do is should update the link table, and it's going to set all the values of the description column equal to empty description. So if we go ahead and run that, it worked. So now let's go ahead and say select everything from link again. So we'll say select asterisk from link. And now if I check out my table, you'll notice every single value of the description column has been set to the empty description string there. So you can imagine this is pretty useful if you want to update data. Now let's go ahead and do an update using a where statement in order to specifically only update certain rows of a column. So let's go ahead and update the name column if the name starts with an A, so a capital A. We have Amazon and .com and A.com, and the names are Amazon and A. So let's go ahead and update those specific descriptions. So I'm going to again say update the table name. In this case, the table name is link. And I'm going to say set, and let's go ahead and set the name column. Actually, let's go ahead and set the description column, sorry. We'll set description equal to, let's go ahead and say name starts with an A. as the whole string for that description. And now I'm going to say where the name column, and let's go ahead and say where the name column begins with an A. So we'll say where name, like, and remember we have to use these wildcard operators. So I'm going to say where it has an A, percentage sign. So this basically means where the name is like and starts with an A somewhere. So what we should see is the URLs and name values of www.a.com A and amazon.com Amazon. The description should change to say name starts with an A. Let's go ahead and run that. Looks like it returned successfully. So let's go ahead and check out what happened by selecting everything from link. So I'm going to say select asterisk from link. Let's go ahead and run that. And if I start scrolling down, you'll notice here in my description column, for those specific name and URLs that started with an A, the description now looks like this. It says name starts with an A. So now I can use conditional statements to update certain rows of my data. So you can imagine that's super useful depending on what your use cases are, but I can conditionally update things in the table. So the data is not permanently set. I can go ahead and update it, and more conveniently, I can update it based off a certain condition. And one more thing I want to show you is that you can actually update the data of a column from another column within the same table. So let's go ahead and show you how we can do that. It's going to be really similar, except we'll just pass in the name of a table. So I'm going to say update, again, the link table, and I'm going to set the description column. So set description equal to, and I'm going to go ahead and set it equal to the name column. And as long as these two data types match up, I shouldn't have any problem here. So they're both varying character strings. So let's go ahead and update the link. We'll set the description column to be basically matching the name column. So we'll go ahead and run that. Looks like the query returned successfully. So now let's go ahead and say select everything from link, run that. And now you'll notice that the name column and the description column are the exact same. Okay, great. One more thing I want to show you is that you've noticed after I run the update, it usually just in the data output says query ran successfully. We can actually add a keyword term known as returning in order to return columns of the updated entries. So we can go ahead and show you an example of how that works. So I'm going to go ahead and say update the table name, which is link. I'm going to go ahead and set the description column. So set the description column equal to, let's just make it equal to some string called new description. And let's go ahead and specify where, ID, so where that ID column is equal to 1. So basically, where the ID column here, the ID integer is equal to 1, we're going to go ahead and update the set description equal to new description. So that should affect basically that first google.com entry. And if we ran this just by itself, it would have just said, oh, query successfully run, or run, one entry affected. If I actually want to get the results back of the updated entries, I can add another keyword, and that keyword is returning. And I can go ahead and then state columns that I want to return. So I can say returning ID, URL, name, description. And that's just going to return those columns themselves. So let's go ahead and check this out. And there it is. So now we've able to, instead of just seeing query successfully run, one row affected, etc., we can actually get returned results and verify that the entries are updated. Let's go ahead and verify this another way. Again, that keyword is returning. I'm going to go ahead and verify this another way just by saying select asterisk from link. And if I run that, selecting everything from link, if we look for Google, here at the bottom we have google.com, Google, and notice the description, instead of being the name, it's still new description. So that returning did work, and it did return the updated entries. All right, so that's really all there is as far as updating SQL. Again, as I mentioned earlier with the insert statements and other statements here in this particular section of the course, more likely than not, you're not going to be doing these things manually. You're going to be using this in conjunction with some other larger program or automated script. But it's essential to understand how to do these things manually so you can later automate them. Okay, so that's it for the update section. Feel free to post any discussion questions in case you need any clarifications. Thanks, and I'll see you at the next lecture.